Yun's life hung by a thread, and he was nearly killed. Fortunately, Xiao Yan arrived in time and blocked the crucial strike. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. Picking up from last time, after nearly half a day had slipped by, the vast and solemn Xianxia palace finally fell into a quiet stillness. Within the grand hall, where incense smoke curled in pale spirals beneath the towering beams, Wu Wanlong and Xia Tianqing brought their lengthy discussion to an end. The matters they had debated were weighty, their words measured and deliberate, as though each sentence carried the gravity of centuries. At last the two rose from their seats and made their way toward the exit, their robes swaying softly with each step. The elders who had accompanied them followed close behind, forming a dignified procession. Wu Wanlong and Xia Tianqing walked at the forefront, their presences steady and commanding, yet faintly relaxed now that their deliberation was complete. As they approached the entrance of the great hall, sunlight streamed in through the towering gates, casting long shadows across the polished stone floor. It was at that moment that a voice, gentle yet tinged with emotion, drifted into Wu Wanlong's ears. "That accident from several hundred years ago. I still owe you my life. I've never truly thanked you for saving me." Wu Wanlong paused for only the briefest instant before letting out a soft, unhurried chuckle. His expression was calm, almost dismissive, as though the matter had long since faded from his mind. "Forget it," he replied lightly. "An old man lending a hand to a little girl. What was that? But a trivial effort. It wasn't worth remembering." His tone was casual, but the faint warmth in his eyes betrayed a memory not entirely forgotten. Xia Tianqing shot him an indignant look, her lips curling in mild protest. "Old man saving a little girl. What nonsense are you spouting?" she retorted. "We're practically the same age. If you insist on calling yourself old, then I can make myself look older too." Her voice carried a rare hint of playfulness, a stark contrast to her usual composed and dignified demeanor. For a fleeting moment, the oppressive solemnity of the palace atmosphere lightened, as though the past had momentarily bridged the distance between them. Before Wu Wanlong could respond, however, the space above the vast myriad phenomena plaza ahead of them suddenly began to distort. The air rippled like water struck by an unseen force, twisting and folding in upon itself. A low hum resonated through the plaza as spatial energy gathered and churned. In the blink of an eye, two figures stepped out from the fractured void as if emerging from another realm entirely. It was Xiao Yan, and beside him stood Medusa, also known as Kai Lin, her presence cold and regal, her beauty sharp and imposing as ever. Wu Wanlong's brows lifted slightly in surprise. His gaze swept past the pair, searching instinctively. "Yin isn't with you?" he asked, a trace of curiosity flickering across his face. Xiao Yan stepped forward, respectfully cupping his fists in greeting. Though young, his bearing was steady, and his eyes held a determined gleam. "Junior Xiao Yan has come with a matter for which I humbly seek guidance from the seniors," he said, his voice clear and sincere. At his words, one of the elders who had just emerged from the hall let out a faint sigh. Glancing back at the towering doors they had only just passed through. "We've only just stepped out," the elder muttered with a hint of exasperation. "Are we going to turn right around and head back inside again?" The surrounding elders exchanged puzzled glances, their expressions varying between curiosity and mild confusion. They had not expected to be intercepted so soon after concluding such an extensive discussion. All eyes gradually settled on Xiao Yan. Under the collective scrutiny of so many powerful figures, he remained composed, his posture upright. Beside him, Kai Lin stood silent, her gaze sharp and unreadable, as though she were a queen surveying her court. The air grew still. Whatever Xiao Yan had come to request, it was clear that it was no small matter. However, the instant Wu Wanlong and Xia Tianqing caught sight of the grave, almost solemn expression on Xiao Yan's face, the faint ease between them vanished. The young man stood straight as a spear, his eyes steady yet shadowed with urgency. This was not the demeanor of someone seeking casual advice. It was the look of one carrying a burden that could shake foundations. Wu Wanlong's brows knit together. Xia Tianking's gaze sharpened. Neither of them spoke at first, but the unspoken understanding between these seasoned figures was clear. Something serious had occurred. After a brief pause, Xia Tianking turned slightly and lifted a hand toward the elders who had been following behind them. "Return to the hall," he said in a low yet commanding voice. "We will continue the discussion inside." The elders exchanged looks but did not question the order. One by one, they turned back toward the grand hall of Xianxia Palace, their robes fluttering as they retraced their steps. The atmosphere grew heavy. Whatever Xiao Yan had come to report was important enough to warrant reopening a meeting that had just concluded after half a day of deliberation. Meanwhile, far from Xianxia Palace, on a nameless continent shrouded in ancient desolation, where mountains pierced the clouds and the earth seemed scarred by the passage of countless ages, Han Yin had already departed from Xiao Yan and the others. He moved through the void with unhurried confidence, each step carrying him across vast distances. The heavens trembled faintly beneath his aura as though unwilling to resist his passage. Yet even someone of his status had not expected what awaited him here. As he descended above a colossal heavenly pit, a chasm so immense that it seemed to swallow light itself, the surrounding space abruptly grew tense. A figure stood in his path. Suspended in mid-air above the yawning abyss, robes fluttering against the wind, was none other than Zhuang Yuanzi, the palace master of Xianxia Palace. The air between them turned sharp. Ha Yuanyun halted, his gaze narrowing slightly. For a split second, surprise flickered across his eyes, quickly replaced by disdain. Then he laughed. His laughter rolled across the sky like thunder echoing from mountain to mountain, shaking the heavens themselves. "Ha ha! A mere Xianxia Palace dares to covet the Taigu divine vein. How utterly laughable!" His voice dripped with contempt. "With only one heaven supreme standing in my way, you think you can stop me from leaving? That seems rather impossible." The wind howled. Above the enormous heavenly pit, Zhuang Yuanzi remained motionless. His expression was cold, and a chilling gleam flashed across his face. "If one heaven supreme is not enough to stop you," his voice was calm, yet carried an unmistakable edge, "what about two?" As his words fell, the space not far behind him twisted violently. The void cracked open like fragile glass, revealing a rift of blinding light. From within that distortion, a middle-aged man in a flowing yellow robe stepped forward slowly. His aura was vast and boundless, like an ancient mountain that had stood for eternity. His presence alone seemed to stabilize the trembling heavens. The sect master of the ancient heaven and earth gate, Mu Hengtian. The moment he appeared, the air grew heavier, as though the world itself had acknowledged the arrival of another supreme existence. He Yuanyun's laughter gradually faded. His eyes darkened as he studied the newcomer. "Well done," he said at last, his tone turning deep and resonant. "So you've actually joined forces to oppose my Taigu divine clan." His gaze swept between Zhuang Yuanzi and Mu Hengtian, and for the first time, a trace of seriousness crept into his expression. "So your true target was never Wu Wanlong, with whom you had old grievances?" His lips curved slightly, though there was no warmth in the smile. "It was me." The winds howled louder, spiraling around the heavenly pit, as three titanic auras clashed invisibly in mid-air. Still, Yuanyun continued, his eyes narrowing with dangerous curiosity. "I am rather intrigued. How did you gather the courage to confront one of the 12 holy sons of the Mang clan?" The title echoed like a decree of fate. The 12 holy sons of the Mang clan. Each one a monstrous existence nurtured by the Taigu divine clan, beings whose names alone were enough to make countless powers tremble. To stand against one was to invite calamity. Yet here they were, two heaven supremes, blocking his path. The sky darkened. The abyss below seemed to stir, and in the silence that followed, it was clear. This was no mere interception. This was the opening move of a storm that would shake the heavens. But the very moment Yuanyun's words faded into the wind, Another voice suddenly echoed across the horizon, cold, detached and filled with undisguised disdain. That voice did not come from behind Zhuang Yuanzi. It came from the opposite side, from the direction He Yuan Yun had intended to leave. A mere ancient heaven and earth gate dares to meddle in the affairs of my Taigu divine clan. The tone was indifferent, almost lazy, yet beneath that indifference lay a killing intent, so sharp it seemed to slice through the sky, truly courting death. The heavens trembled. Far ahead, space twisted once more. The void folded inward like silk, being gathered by invisible fingers. From within the distortion, a figure stepped out calmly, as though walking through an ordinary doorway. It was a young man clad in a simple brown outer robe. His attire was unremarkable. His bearing was quiet. But the most striking feature about him, there was not a single strand of hair upon his head. The smooth scalp reflected the dim light of the sky, giving him an oddly ascetic appearance. Yet the aura that emanated from him was anything but serene. It was vast, oppressive, and ancient, like a slumbering beast that had awakened. The moment He Yuan Yun laid eyes upon him, his body stiffened. For the first time since his interception, true shock crossed his face. An incredulous voice tore from his throat, resounding across heaven and earth. The fourth holy son, Tongdan, the title alone carried immense weight. The fourth holy son of the Man clan, a name that stood above countless prodigies within the Taigu divine clan. A being whose talent, status, and authority far surpassed even that of He Yuan Yun. Tongdan's lips curved faintly, so he said lightly, his eyes glinting with faint amusement, "You figured it out." His gaze shifted toward the distant heavenly pit, toward the faint fluctuations hidden beneath its depths. So the one who coveted the Taigu divine vein all along was you. He Yuan Yun's expression darkened. "That's right," Tongdan admitted, without the slightest attempt at denial. "Though it is only 1/10 of the complete Taigu divine vein, this fragment alone is enough for me to break into the Heaven's supreme realm within a few decades." His voice remained calm, as if speaking of something inevitable. "And once I do victory in the next Holy Sun, competition will be firmly in my grasp." His eyes narrowed slightly. To leave such a treasure in your hands would simply be a waste. The words were gentle, but they were also merciless. Zhuang Yuanzi's pupils contracted sharply. In an instant, countless thoughts raced through his mind. So that was it. This had never been about ancient grudges. It had never been about Shengshu Palace interfering with the Taigu divine clan. They had been pawns. Mu Hengtian, standing to the side, lowered his head slightly toward Tongdan. The reverence in his posture was unmistakable, far deeper than the cooperation he had shown earlier. That small gesture spoke volumes. No wonder Mu Hengtian had been so thoroughly informed about He Yuan Yun's movements. No wonder he had dared to join hands so decisively. Behind him stood an even higher-ranking holy son. Zhuang Yuanzi's heart sank. Only now did he fully realize the truth. He had been dragged into the internal struggle among the holy sons of the Taigu divine clan. The Taigu divine clan was no ordinary power. It was an ancient behemoth whose influence spanned countless realms. The competition among its 12 holy sons was notoriously ruthless. Each one vied for greater authority, greater resources, and ultimately the supreme inheritance of the clan. And now, a dignified fourth holy son had secretly colluded with external forces to seize a fragment of the Taigu divine vein. If word of this were to spread within the clan, the consequences would be unimaginable. The internal factions would erupt into chaos. Blood would flow. He Yuan Yun slowly lifted his head. The initial shock in his expression gradually faded, replaced by something colder. His aura began to surge, rippling outward like a tidal wave that distorted the surrounding void. He stood suspended in mid-air, robes fluttering wildly, his gaze fixed squarely upon Tongdan. So, his voice was no longer mocking. It was deep, dangerous. "You've chosen to show yourself openly." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "But do you truly believe that with just the two of them?" His eyes flicked briefly toward Zhuang Yuanzi and Mu Hengtian. "You can suppress me." The sky darkened further. 3 holy suns, 2 heaven supremes, and beneath them, the sleeping fragment of the Taigu divine vein. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, because everyone present understood one thing clearly. Once the next sentence was spoken, there would be no turning back. At this moment, the situation had turned utterly dire. Behind He Yuanyun stood Zhuang Yuanzi of Shengshu Palace, his aura steady and oppressive like an ancient mountain sealing off retreat. Before him were Mu Hengtian of the ancient heaven and earth gate, and Tongdan, the fourth holy sun, the true mastermind who had drawn all the threads together into this deadly net. The heavens above seemed to darken, as if even the sky understood that what was about to unfold would shake the balance of powers. Tongdan's eyes locked onto He Yuanyun with icy sharpness. "I don't know how you managed to seize a portion of the Taigu divine vein for yourself," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "But since it can enter your body, that means it can also enter mine." A sneer tugged at the corner of his lips. There was no attempt to disguise his greed, no pretense of righteousness. The Taigu divine vein was a supreme treasure, an ancient source of power that could reshape destiny itself. In the ruthless competition among the holy suns, mercy was weakness. He Yuanyun's eyes narrowed to slits. He understood immediately this was no longer a contest of pride, nor a matter of saving face within the clan. This was a hunt, and he was the prey. In the next instant, without the slightest hesitation, he pushed the spiritual power within his body to its absolute limit. Boom! The surrounding air exploded outward as boundless spiritual energy surged like a tidal wave. His figure turned into a streak of golden black light, tearing through space as he shot toward the distant horizon at terrifying speed. He did not speak. He did not threaten. He fled. Seeing this, a cold smile curved across Tongdan's lips. Trying to run, his voice was soft, almost amused. He Yuanyun had already dashed several thousand zhang away, crossing mountains and clouds in the blink of an eye when, buzz, the space before him suddenly vibrated violently. A crimson ripple spread outward like a burning scar across the void. The air twisted, then split apart. From within the distorted space stepped a figure clad in red robes, radiant like blazing flames. He stood directly in He Yuanyun's path, blocking it completely. The 12th holy sun, Yen Yao. Shock burst from He Yuanyun's mouth, his momentum forced to a halt as the oppressive aura ahead surged forward. He had expected Tongdan. He had anticipated Mu Hengtian. But another holy sun, he had not foreseen this. The red-robed youth Yan Yao crossed his arms leisurely over his chest. His handsome face bore a playful smile, yet his eyes flickered with cunning light. "He, brother," He Yan Yao said lazily, as though greeting an old acquaintance at a banquet, rather than intercepting him in a life-and-death ambush. "I heard you disappeared for quite some time recently." His gaze swept meaningfully over He Yuanyun's body. "So you were out, having fun." The mockery was unmistakable. Behind him, Tongdan Mu Hengtian and Zhuang Yuanzi had already sealed the surrounding space. Invisible barriers rippled through the void, forming a massive cage that locked heaven and earth together. There was no escape route left. He Yuanyun's heart sank. He could sense it clearly, 2 heaven supremes and 2 holy suns. Even for him, a holy son of the Man clan, this formation was overwhelming. At this critical moment, hesitation meant death. With a roar that shook the heavens, He Yuanyun no longer held back. He fully unleashed the spiritual power within him. Boom, boom, boom. The sky darkened as boundless spiritual energy erupted outward in violent waves. His figure expanded rapidly, bones cracking flesh, swelling scales emerging from beneath his skin. In a matter of breaths, the human form vanished. In its place rose a colossal heavenly python tens of thousands of zhang long. Its body coiled through the sky like a dark golden mountain range. Each scale shimmered with ancient runes radiating terrifying divine might. Its eyes burned like twin suns filled with fury and desperation. The mere movement of its massive body stirred storms across the land below. Mountains crumbled, clouds shattered, revealing one's true form. This was the ultimate measure of a spiritual beast, a last resort. For beings of divine bloodline, such an act meant casting aside pride and strategy in favor of raw survival. It meant acknowledging that one had been cornered. Yan Yun had been driven to that very brink. Yet even as the heavenly python roared, shaking the sky with earth-shattering might, clarity remained in his mind. He understood one brutal truth. Even in his true form, even at full power, facing two heaven supremes and two holy suns simultaneously, his chances of victory were virtually zero. If he fought head-on, he would die here. There was only one option left: escape. The colossal python coiled tightly, gathering power. Dark golden light condensed along its scales, spatial fluctuations erupting violently around its massive form. Then, with a thunderous boom, it lunged forward, tearing through space with savage force, attempting to smash open even the faintest crack in the sealed heavens. Because survival, no matter how slim the chance, was still better than certain death. A thunderous roar ripped from Yan Yun's throat, shaking the very firmament. His colossal body, stretching tens of thousands of zhang, dark golden scales flashing with ancient radiance, shot violently toward the sky. The force of his ascent tore through layers of cloud and distorted the void itself. It was not merely an attempt to flee. It was a desperate bid to shatter the heavens. But the moment he moved, Zhuang Yuanzi and Mu Hengtian exchanged a single glance. No words were needed. In the next breath, the two heaven supremes released their auras without reservation. Boom! An overwhelming pressure descended upon a million lie of heaven and earth. The sky dimmed. The wind froze. The laws of space twisted under their authority. Spiritual light surged like invisible chains spreading across the horizon. The entire world transformed into a colossal cage. Within this sealed domain, every strand of spiritual energy, every flicker of space fell under their absolute control. High above the enormous heaven-reaching python suddenly trembled. Its massive body stiffened mid-flight. It was as though invisible hands had grasped it from all directions, locking its movement completely in place. No matter how it struggled, no matter how its scales glowed or its muscles tensed, it could not advance even a single inch. Yan Yin could only lower his massive head and glare with burning fury at the four figures below. 4 silhouettes, 4 hunters, and he was trapped prey. At that moment, Tongdan's figure flickered. Without warning, he shot upward like a streak of brown lightning, appearing before the immobilized heaven-reaching python in the blink of an eye. There was no wasted motion. He slowly raised his hand, then struck downward. It was a simple palm, but within that palm lay the crushing might of a future heaven supreme. The sky cracked. A deafening boom exploded as the palm force collided with Yan Yun's enormous body. Scales shattered. Golden blood sprayed like rain. The gigantic heaven-reaching python was blasted downward, smashing into the earth below with catastrophic force. The impact created a crater tens of thousands of zhang deep. Mountains collapsed. The land split apart. Shockwaves rippled outward for thousands of li. Dust and debris soared into the sky like a dark storm. At the center of the massive crater, the heaven-reaching python had vanished. In its place lay a battered, blood-soaked figure. Yan Yun had reverted to human form. His robes were torn. His body was riddled with wounds. Blood pooled beneath him, staining the shattered earth crimson. Tongdan floated high above, looking down coldly like a god passing judgment. "Hand over your Taigu divine vein," he said, his voice icy and devoid of emotion. "Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." Silence hung in the air. Within the crater, Yan Yun struggled to lift his head. Blood trickled from the corner of his lips. Yet, a faint smile still appeared on his face. "If you want it." His voice was hoarse but steady. "Come and take it yourself." Tongdan's expression darkened instantly, courting death. The temperature of the surrounding space seemed to plummet. His gaze snapped toward another figure in the sky. Yenyao. The red-robed youth did not hesitate. His figure flashed like a burning meteor plunging toward the crater below. at terrifying speed. As he descended, grey flames burst from his body, strange, sinister fire that seemed to devour light itself. The flames roared and expanded, transforming into a colossal grey fire palm that covered the sky. The terrifying palm descended violently toward the injured Yuan. It was a killing strike. But just as the grey flaming palm was about to crush down, buzz, a sharp, piercing sound suddenly echoed from within the crater. Space trembled violently. Then it tore apart. A massive spatial rift split open above Yun's body, black and unstable, swirling with chaotic energy. From within that rift, a figure burst forth at astonishing speed. Clad in black robes, his movements swift as lightning. The moment he emerged, brilliant, multicolored light erupted from within his body, flames of different hues intertwining and merging. That boundless energy condensed in an instant, compressed, refined, until it became a tiny speck of light, small, almost insignificant, yet radiating an aura so pure and destructive that even the surrounding space trembled in fear. The speck shot forward and collided fiercely with the descending grey fire palm. Yao's pupils shrank sharply. Crack, crack, crack. Under the impact of that tiny point of light, fissures spread rapidly across the surface of the massive grey palm. In the next instant, boom, the fire palm exploded into countless fragments, grey flames scattering like shattered stars across the sky. Shockwaves blasted outward, forcing even Yao to retreat several steps mid-air. Silence followed. Everyone's gaze locked onto the crater. Even Tongdan's expression changed. As the smoke slowly dispersed, a tall black-robed figure stood protectively before the battered Yun. His robes fluttered in the wind. His posture was straight, his presence calm. Yet from within him surged an aura that blended different flames, wild, ancient, and immeasurably deep. Yao's face darkened. "Who is it?" His furious shout echoed across heaven and earth. The black-robed young man slowly lifted his gaze. His eyes were clear, unwavering. When he spoke, his calm voice carried across the entire sealed world. "Flame Emperor Xiao Yan." The name resounded like thunder. The wind stilled, the sky trembled, and the true storm had only just begun. That's all for today's chapter. If you enjoyed this continuation, your support means everything. Becoming a member gives me more motivation to bring you longer, more intense battles and epic moments like this. Thank you so much. See you in the next part.